Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is J.Iversen. I will be presenting the first session of our project, the information of which is here. I'm going to make some, we're going to be talking today about how economic crises impact the patterns of innovation. We'll talk a few about the what we do, how we do it, why we do it, and what we find in the course of the presentation. But at the same time, I'd like to especially welcome the invited guests, which I'll come back to under this session. We have a keynote speaker, which will be following this talk. But I'm going to just start by presenting introducing the project, but also talking about today's program and talk a little bit about who was involved in the project. But before I do that, and while you read this slide, I'd like you to think about where you were for 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the end of February, beginning of March, we were in a different scenario. 2 weeks hence, we would have faced lockdown in Norway. We wouldn't have been here. We would have been hearing about ventilators. We would be hearing about what was happening in especially in Italy, and that was a period of time of great uncertainty. So what we're going to talk about today is for a BA project financed by the Research Council of Norway, and it's important to note this is a collaborative and knowledge-building project. Not a research project per se, but we tried to build knowledge in terms of finding better ways to assess how crisis affects innovation activity and how the patterns of innovation there adapts. And it was also a collaborative project. So it was a project that involved NIFU and Statistics Norway. And we had two institutional partners with whom we had several exchanges, and this is the last exchange. The point was to try to provide information and input for their ongoing activities in the face of crises. And I would also like to thank those both Abelia and Innovation Norway. And I would also like to thank everybody who has come today. So, who are we? I'm standing here as the project leader of the RelinC project. However, I'm not the initiator of the project. The credit for this, the idea of the project and its initial elaboration was Marco Capasso, who has moved on in his career, and he worked a lot with Marina Ribalke at Statistics Norway, who's unfortunately not here, but she'll be listening to what we say today. So I want to thank those individuals specifically before we start. But in terms of the NIFU team, I'm here together with Mika Mark, Espen Solberg, who will be chairing this second session, and a couple other colleagues who have participated throughout the project. As I mentioned, from Statistics Norway, Marina Ribalke was joined by Erik Fjerli, who was head of the section of the Statistics Norway, who's here today and will be presenting. And I already mentioned the institutional partners. So what we together, when I say we collectively, those are the people who were involved. And today the program is basically divided into two major sessions. But first we start with a keynote where we're lucky enough to have got Professor Daniele Archibugi to join us, and he will be making the presentation. I will introduce him more properly in a few minutes. I just want you to get an idea of the two sessions. One session where we talk about the project, and a second session, because it's a collaborative endeavor, we will be discussing, there will be a panel discussion, there will be an interview, or a more directed discussion between Per Kok from Forskningspolitikk, the periodical, and Daniele Archibugi. And then, so that's the basic schedule for today. The two complementary sessions will look like this. So without, and yeah, here we see the participants also from the panel discussion, which will take place in Norwegian after the interview, or the what should I call it, a targeted discussion between Per and Daniele. So with that, let me put up on Daniele's slides, and we can welcome him properly to Norway. He comes to us from Rome, and he will. He is here. So Professor Archibugi is for everybody. He doesn't. Many people already know Daniele, and he has been a figure in the field of post-Schumpeterian economics, and especially from a policy perspective for 30 years or so. He is a professor at Birkbeck University, but first and foremost, he's at the Italian National Research Council. So he's very much also a practitioner in terms of the public policy sphere, working with science, technology, innovation policy across different levels. So Daniele provides, therefore, both a deep perspective from the scientific community, where he's a pioneer in the work that we're in how should I call it? How innovation patterns are affected by crisis. Did a lot of his seminal work on this is from the financial crisis 10 years ago. So if he is ready, I would, in addition, while he's getting a cup of coffee, I would like to say, that he's also has been a visiting professor in various universities, Harvard, Kyoto, and he has worked for different organizations, the OECD and the EU. So he brings to the table both an international perspective and also a perspective that goes across the communities that are represented here today.